GM one and all, welcome to the weekly All Hands. I am a little bit constrained. I only have a single screen for myself today, so let me see if I can do a quick attendance. Links, Tom, Arkisti, Sprinkles, NF Thinker, Winverse. Yeah, I think I got everyone. Nice. All right, and in case you are wondering, this is our weekly all team tactical. We're going to use this time to sync up on what's going on around the B Foundation, eliminate blockers, and prioritize our work for the next week. We at the B Foundation help purpose driven communities use Web3 tooling to generate revenue and engagement. On our lag metrics, we have 120 transaction volume. That's up 21 from the last week. We also have a new user, which I haven't checked into, but that's always good to see. Had a couple of people ask me about BCard actually spontaneous in the last week, which was kind of interesting. But yeah, uh, all this to say that we're still moving forward. Couple team-wide announcements. Don't forget to use the "What did you ship" channel, and this can be for stuff even if you're shipping internally to the team, if you're shipping to someone for review, if you're shipping to like a Discord channel for review or something like that. You can definitely use the "What did you ship" channel for that, and we do have some standard bounties here in case you're wondering. Popping down into our milestone perspective, we're aiming to create revenue and engagement to get 10 weekly transacting users. We do have some stuff on support. Shelby is working on a transaction bug and a snapshot bug. How are these going, Shelby?
I honestly haven't looked at them much this week. I'm sorry. I will.
All right, cool. Well, just let me know, and I will take a look after you take a look. Um, and I need to ask as well. Well, Richard brought this up, and I haven't looked too deeply into it yet, but hopefully I'll get a chance today or tomorrow. We had a bunch of active users last week, and it looks like it might be the account idle fees, where they basically charge you 495 after a year of inactivity. That could be okay because we are sending our users monthly statements. They'll see that that's happening, but we want to make sure that they're not going to get dinged on their credit or anything. It's not going to get sent to collections or anything like that. So I just have to send them an email to ask about how that works. And if there's something negative for our users to just give them some warning so that or we can help them close the account or something like that if they're not using it anymore. Just want to look into that so that we're not screwing anyone over. 10 new users a week. On the voting side, I did get a vote through last week. It's a bug that I've been working on for like a week and a half. So I did get it to go through. But right, got that to happen. There's a bunch of other UI work that I need to do. Okay, so we casted the vote. You need to see that. So I'm just going to work on that this week and hopefully get a voting for desktop out the door. The reason I mentioned it's for desktop is because I actually have not, since I added that voting sidebar, I haven't really made it responsive, which means that it would work on mobile very easily. But we do have a plan of how that's going to look. We have some wireframes for that. So the next thing after I get like a desktop version out, and I'll actually push that like to production when it works. But the next thing after that is to basically make a mobile version work. This should take into account the things that I'm doing, but then also as we're adding new widgets, we have kind of a place for them. We know how that's going to work moving forward. So in some ways, it's like creating that kind of like widget UI framework, and I'll see how that works. But first, I'm going to try to get something to production this week. On the deposit side, Tom did get some functionality to deposit into our pool together pool working. Did you want to give an update on this, Tom?
Sure, yeah. I just got the rough framework in place for the Rails for contract integration via the Privy accounts, so that if you're in the circumstance where your wallet has funds and your wallet has gas, you can just click a button and all of a sudden your money is deposited or withdrawn, depending on which button that you click. So it's just a hopefully first steps in getting a super simple, easy to use, one click or 1 or 2 click deposit flow for all the communities. The step is to try it out first here with our USDC and WETH pools, and then from there abstract it away, componentize it so that any community can use it for any of their vaults that they deploy.
Nice. All right. Thanks for that, Tom. Do you want any next steps?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably another week or so of hammering through some testing and hopefully ready by next week, I would say.
Nice. All right. So for Black Flag Collective, the September vote is up. I do need to share on socials, which I haven't done yet, but I'll do that today, just so that we get a little bit more engagement on that. Um, Working on our own community, blog posts on our system. How's this going, Arcusty?
I have not made much progress on that.
Okay. I just wanted to let you know as well that someone asked me about this week. Like what is our system to
Okay.
distribute tokens and how do we do it? And also he was saying like, like the people who I'm working with, they don't use crypto at all. So how might I do it? And so it's just like, oh
Okay.
wow, this is actually right up our alley. So we could potentially like if we get the website kind of I mean, with some of the stuff that Tom's working on, where it actually shows you your token balance,
Mhm.
and we get the website kind of like working a little bit, it could be something where um, we have that full flow. Hey, new users sign up on this website. You as a community leader, you get a splits account. You have some way of like recording contribution, and then um, you can people sign up with this website. They see the tokens and they can vote. Anyways, just wanted
Right.
to let you know that someone had asked about it.
Okay. Right. Good to know.
Yeah. Yeah, and they also told me that they've been watching our YouTube videos, so that's kind of interesting. Just another uh, data point on the fact that those YouTube videos are useful for getting people interested. All right.
Is this where
Hop
we do
into
a
a
call
song
out
there.
to all of our fans on YouTube and ask them to like and subscribe?
Like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. And they are always saying as well, like, what do you think about X? Tell us in the comments.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's some
yeah.
feedback.
So well, we are going to have a discussion on ownership today, and so if you have any thoughts on ownership, go ahead and throw them in the comments. Although I don't think I ever comment on YouTube, but if other people do, I guess I might as well. All right. So last week we closed it off to make it easy to get tokens to contributors as we got the historical accounting out, which is nice, and that actually got sent out via the multisig, if I'm not mistaken. NF Thinker, was that right?
Yeah, I executed that transaction.
Amazing. Okay, cool. So yeah, so that's it for historical stuff. Going forward, we're going to focus on the contributor output that Arcusty's been doing using splits. And so we're really just trying to get that Black Flag token out. But if we do need like stuff from the treasury, we can go ahead and we can figure that out as we go. But we can use that kind of like governance and proposals channel if you want to get like money out of the treasury. But right now we're trying to have like kind of like a lower impact way of doing things by just using that splits thing. By the way, Splits released a new feature based on some of the feedback we gave them, which is a multi-send. And so it's similar to something that, on-chain Den and Safe UI already do via like a CSV upload. And so it's like a more UI version of it. And they said that they would update it. Well, Richard and I tried it last week at the ops meeting. And they said that we found a bug that made it so that we couldn't use it at all, but they said that they would fix that for us. So yeah, they are making progress forward to as well. All right. Community pages milestone 1, basically snapshot voting, endowment fund deposit withdrawal. There's chatter and wireframes. I think like one of the things that I realized as I was looking at your deposit and withdrawal widget, Tom, is that I probably need to spend a little bit, like there's no wireframe for that. There's no design for that. And there's no design around showing people's community token balance, right? Like you can't actually see what's in your wallet on that page. So it reminds me that I need to spend a little time on that.
Yeah, we should be able to expose all that stuff too. That was kind of the first thing that I did was like sort of expose your wallet balance of ETH, expose your wallet balance of USDC, so that it could be a little bit more feedback there. But we could certainly expand on that to add for a little more detailed functionality or like wallet usefulness and utility to that area for sure.
So we have like in the BCard app, we have those two kind of like what's in your wallet widgets, which is as I was thinking about this, I was realizing, well, we have that badges widget, which is showing your NFTs. It's kind of like whitelisted NFTs. And then we have the rewards widget, which kind of shows like real time what's in your wallet at that moment. Which is yeah, it's just kind of like, anyways, we have those two, and I was like, I mean, this is an open question to everyone in the group. The question to me was like, should we have them separate like that, or should they be together as like a contents of your wallet, or should they be separate like that? I wasn't quite sure as I was like trying to think through like what the UI might look like.
I like the idea of having them be enabled individually, largely just because some communities may dislike NFTs and not want them included or mentioned or anything, and some might want to hide the fact that that they have tokens or use tokens or whatever as well. I don't know why that would be, but having it just be individually selectable, like one or the other, makes some sense.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, like because they are two different entities for two different kind of use cases. But yeah, anyone else have any opinion on this?
I agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I was gonna say I like the way that something like Zerion does it. You can see your tokens and then you see your collectibles. You can click on history, and actually a new one that they just included now is called Perks. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, let me just get to a suitable wallet. Right, okay. This will work. Okay, so share screen to that's video. Sorry, I'm on my phone here and I can't see where to do it.
It's like you have to continue scrolling.
Yeah, down. Sure. It's deactivated for some reason. I don't know why.
I wonder if I
Okay,
can
well, I can't
access
my
it.
screen.
Zerion. Is that it?
Yeah, Zerion with a ZZ. And if I'll just take some screen grabs and then you can
Okay, I
maybe share.
see. Tokens, NFT, history, perks.
Oh, yeah, did you find that? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so tokens and NFTs, definitely different things. History is obviously important. You want to see history. It can get confusing because a lot of times when I'm looking at history, I do get confused between history of that specific token or history of my entire wallet if the last 10 transactions have all been through one token. So that's just like my own thinking out loud. What am I actually looking at? History of what? The account or the token? But then perks, that that could be the ultimate variable, right? Like what's the redeemable? What can you do with the tokens? I've got these collectibles. Say, for example, I've got a board ape, as if I wish. So I got a board ape. It shows up in my collectibles section. But what can I do with that board ape? Nobody knows until you go to the perk section and you see, oh, I can get 10% off in the Adidas store. Okay, great. I go there and then I redeem. So it's kind of like that. Perks and redeemables, I would say, are along the same thread there.
Yeah, that's interesting as well, because if we're talking about, like, we were kind of thinking about this as like membership, right? And so like membership usually has perks, right, associated with it. So yeah, it's interesting. I think that like what we put on the homepage needs to be like a slimmed down version of whatever, right? Like even the voting needs to be slimmed down a little bit. But I think that there's probably going to be like an account page of some sort, which Tom has already kind of coded an account page up, but like I think like an account page which has like a little bit more like let's say a traditional wallet view might be interesting. It just shows kind of like all of these things, right? And maybe it's um in different ways. But yeah, because I was thinking to myself like, oh, like one of the things I was thinking to myself is like, oh, this information that you see in a regular wallet is just there's too much information here. But yes, I agree with you that perks is really interesting.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. Information overload is not great, and that's just another thing that I always consider when I'm looking at like your tokens. Is it the tokens for the account? Is it the or the history rather? History for the entire account, history for that specific token. Um, so yeah, just little things that we have to consider when we're implementing and trying to reduce features, reduce clutter, implement features.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's
I
not
was
bad in the BCard app. Sorry, go ahead,
I'd
Tom.
looked. I looked at Zerion before. Like, I do use it on my mobile devices as just a like overall portfolio tracker or whatever. But they had released an API, and I had looked into it on the early release. So maybe it's something to circle back and look in on, see if it would be good to like flow through. You know, if they allow us to sort of toggle on and off what we need to see or whatever, just to get the data based on a contract address. Maybe that's a simple solution.
Yeah, could be. Could be.
Very cool.
I'm realizing I was looking in the BCard app now, and I realized that the rewards are broken. So I'm gonna have to look into that at some point. But yeah, I will probably look into it as I'm looking at how to put these tokens out. But yes, cool. Okay. So that's where we're aiming to go for the community page, milestone 1. I guess Sprinkles, you already gave an update on these ones for Black Flag Endowment Fund. Proposal to announce that was finished. We're going to leave it as it is right now. And then some of these other things we're already working on, but this is not going to happen. And I haven't looked into Braille and Bridge on ramping quite yet, but we do have them available now. Really, this should be kind of merged with community pages milestone 1. And then we already talked about this article. Anything else that we're working on that isn't on this list? Okay. All right. What did we ship last week? Oh, as usual, I forgot to put this stuff in here. Typical.
Yeah,
I'll put it in here. Let me put it in here. Okay.
I noticed it like because I had a thing that was below the line, but it was actually included in last week's.
Okay.
Like one of
That top
yeah
one?
one yeah the top ops thing was actually accounted for last week, even though it was below the line where
Okay.
it said stuff above the line.
All right. Let's do this as we go. So okay.
And
So you entered contributor rewards for splits, so that was already taken into account last time.
yeah, the week 40
Okay.
one.
And you also reported a bug with the statement generator, so that's 250 B card.
Yeah, and I think that was not in last week's, so
Yep.
that's a new item.
Okay. And so I spent some time fixing the login and logout state of the voting widget, and did some more state management, and tried to handle that submitting votes. I also prepped and held this week's all hands, so that's 2,500 B card and 2,000 B card, which is already there. All right. And then next up we have Winverse, who taped and shared this week's all hands for 2,000 B card. And then we had Tom, who created a live wallet balance reader, smart deposit button, and implemented deposit to USD Vault from Privy Wallet. That's 3,000 B card. And then we also had Tom, who did scaffolding of withdraw function from Vault and reorg of basic component UIs for 1.5K B card. Oop. And I forgot to put Tom there. Tom. All right. And I spent 3 hours not getting Snapshot to work. Yeah, that was annoying. I'm glad it works now. Yeah, that was trying to get support from Snapshot specifically was really annoying. They answered very quickly, but they were kind of useless, whereas Privy took forever to answer, but they were extremely useful. So, your mileage may vary. And then Richard entered contributor rewards for week 41. So that's 250 BCard. I tried using Ether's VS with Snapshot, V6 with Snapshot, so just basically more work with the Snapshot voting for 1K BCard. And then I followed the instructions that Privy gave me, and the vote went through, so that's good. And so that's for 1K BCard. And then participate in weekly op meet and check miscellaneous balances and transactions, 30 minutes.
You also did the ops meet, and
Yeah.
so I was checking this beforehand, and I was a little confused because I was almost sure that I remembered seeing the Discord post where you put that in, so I wasn't quite sure if my Discord was somehow not showing updates or whatever. But
Yeah,
I think we figured it out now, and I think we're back on track.
Yeah, and I also held the weekly product meet yesterday for 1K BCard. Okay, great. Anything else that we worked on that's not in here? Okay. I'm just gonna put in a little line so I can remember for next time. Boom. Okay. Great. Thanks everyone for contributing. Yeah, always great to get so much contribution. And next, yeah, I thought unless there are other topics that you guys want to talk about, I thought we might talk about ownership. Does that sound good?
Let's own it.
But real quick, has anyone talked to Drew?
Rose, I haven't talked to him in a while.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Not me. I was actually going to reach out to him today, randomly, of all days.
Yeah.
No, I haven't spoken to him or heard from him.
I've been meaning to reach out to him for the longest time, actually, and I just haven't because had meant to do something for him and I hadn't done it yet, and I hadn't had a chance to do it, so I've been avoiding it. But maybe I just need to poke him. Why do you ask, Sprinkles?
Just curious. I haven't talked to him in a while. He hasn't been here, and I just figured that maybe you guys had talked to him, and if not, maybe I could remind one of you guys to get in touch with him, just because he just hasn't showed up.
Yeah,
I was mad.
I guess part of the reason why I was kind of like, hey, maybe it's okay that he's not around is because he was feeling really salty about the crypto ecosystem in general, and so I thought maybe maybe this is just in my mind, but I was like, maybe he's just outside enjoying the autumn weather. And anyways, that's kind of what I had in my mind, but I wasn't sure. But I will poke him.
Okay.
And thanks for bringing it up, Sprinkles. I appreciate it. All right. So one of our key hypotheses is that ownership creates engagement. And so I just wanted to talk about that because I think that it's useful to kind of deconstruct these hypotheses every once in a while. And so I think first we need to understand, what does ownership mean? And I think this is an open discussion, but I just wrote a couple things down. So control, so decision-making ability, that's one kind of ownership. Another kind of ownership is financial upside. So, hey, you don't get to make decisions, but you do get to profit from some decisions that someone else makes. Some people might call that an investment contract, and that's a very big no-no, but it is a type of ownership. And then finally, the ability to change and customize things to your liking. Some people call open source software something that you can, like, you don't own it, but the fact that you can change and customize it means that in some ways you have more ownership over that versus like using someone else's tool. So for instance, I was using Privy and Snapshot. While Privy stuff is all closed source, which means that I was kind of reliant on Privy to help me when there was a bug. But for Snapshot, I could literally just open up the code, read it, and if there was an issue there, I could just pop that open and fork the code and do something else with it. So, um, yeah, I would say that's another type of ownership is the ability to do those kinds of things. Does ownership spark other definitions in your mind?
Responsibility, I guess, right? The feeling like if something needs to happen, then you are responsible for having or making that thing happen.
Yep. Yeah, it's a really good point. I think it's like the other side of ownership that a lot of people don't think about. Anyone else have any other definitions or? No? Okay. Well, again, this is an open discussion. I think like, there's a textbook definition of what ownership means, but I think that as we move forward, ownership could mean different things to different people, especially since I think that in general, ownership has been stripped away from us in lots of ways, especially in recent times. So you don't own media for the most part, right? You stream everything, which means you can't really have a movie collection. You can't really have a song collection. My friend does have a digital movie collection, but it's kind of illegal, right? Like he's not really, even if he owns the Blu-rays and he rips them himself, technically that's illegal, even though, he's quote unquote owning that movie. While ownership's actually a license nowadays to use that movie on that medium. Which is kind of kick in the guts if you think about it. Owning a house is slipping further and further out of reach of a lot of people, especially younger people. And even if you do own a house, home ownership associations often remove your rights related to owning that place. You can't paint your house a certain color. You have to have certain standards around your yard work and that kind of thing. In some cases, I heard about it. Someone replacing their grass with gravel to have like a kind of like gravel garden. And they got sued by the HOA and they had to rip up everything and put it back to grass. So that's kind of interesting. Another thing, and one of the things we didn't really talk about in the context of ownership as much, but workers' rights are stripped, and shareholders all have all the power. I recently did a stint at the government where I really felt like the people who I was working with versus some people in the private sector, at least some people in like a startup, the ownership that they had and the outcomes was just not there, right? Like they just didn't care as much. They showed up, they did their job, they did what they were supposed to do, what they were told to do, but they didn't really have ownership in the outcome of what they were trying to do. So if their boss told them, hey, I don't think that we should do that, they would just listen, even if they knew that it would have a negative impact on the outcome. So I think that that is something that's worth noting, and maybe it's a little bit more interesting to me than other people, but I think it's something worth noting that that decision making power, I think, has just kind of been stripped away slowly. And search engines and LLMs are just like blatantly stealing content from rights holders. And I don't think that rights holders are going to take this sitting down. Like I think, if you can Ghiblify something, if you can Disneyfy something on ChatGPT, it means that they're obviously consuming some of Disney's IP and then repurposing it to create that. I don't think Disney's going to stand for that, but we'll see. Right now, they're just kind of stealing. And if you're a small producer or a small artist or something like that, you can't really do anything about it. They can just kind of steal, and it doesn't really matter. One could say that ownership itself has been centralized. So I think we often talk about what decentralization means. And I think that if we look at ownership, okay, before you used to be able to own a physical movie. Hey, I own this movie. And then, through the laws, you've kind of seen that like, hey, you don't own that movie anymore. You can't do whatever you want with it. You now own a license to that movie. The ownership is like that kind of ownership has been centralized a little bit further up the chain. So you can't just change. You can't take your DVD and record it onto Bluetooth onto Blu-ray. That is illegal. Same with things like workers' rights. Before, I would say You had like unions, shareholders, and leadership or executives kind of all keeping each other in check. And in the last couple of decades, it's all been about creating shareholder value. And so you've seen shareholders have more and more power over businesses to extract short-term profits, and workers and executives have kind of lost a lot of their power in that kind of framing. So yeah, I think the reason for this is, I mean, I wrote down a couple things like rent seeking, late stage capitalism. I mean, do we know what those terms mean? Do you guys understand what I mean when I say rent seeking and late stage capitalism?
I mean, feel free to embellish.
Sure. I think like rent seeking, like it comes from this idea that that there were landlords in the past who pretty much didn't do anything, um, and they still expected uh, every month for you to pay them something. So like this really comes from I think like um, sharecroppers and farmers who basically kept up their own land, um, and they weren't getting anything from the lord or the baron or whoever who owned the land, but they still, because they were using the land of that person, had to give a portion of their food away, and typically a very large portion of it, despite the fact that they weren't really getting much in return. That's what rent seeking is in general. It's this idea that you're not doing much, but you are just charging a rent. Um, and I think that like some people tried to liken it to modern landlords, which I don't think is as much the case personally. I mean, there's different views on this. There are some landlords who do absolutely nothing, and they just buy houses and they don't maintain them and that kind of thing. And then there are other landlords who are actually quite involved and stuff like that. So, but I think that idea of rent seeking is really just like, hey, I don't have to do anything, and you still have to pay me. That's what rent seeking is, and that's, I would say, like a lot of people's, not a lot of people's, but a lot of like that is like in some ways the highest aspiration of capitalists, because you're getting the most value for the least amount of work. And late stage capitalism, related concept, is this idea that if you follow the ideas of capitalism, if capitalism is your entire system is based on capitalism and nothing else, well, capitalism is all about accruing capital. It's all about like getting more capital, and it turns out the more capital you have, the easier it is to get more capital, because you can take more risks, because you can have your money work for you. You don't have to do anything. You can just put your money in a bank and get paid interest. And so late stage capitalism is basically this idea that the further along you go with capitalism, the more money, capital, and therefore power concentrates into the hands of a few people. And that's, I think you can see it happening with stuff like media, right? Like, so, hey, we used to have a copyright term of 20 years, and then the Disney Corporation came along and said, no, it has to be the death of the rights holder plus 100 years, plus 120 years, plus 140 years. And so you can see that because they have so much money and power, they're able to accomplish this. They're able to continue to centralize power towards them, so that any small producer of media can't really do this. But that's the original idea of capitalism, was that like, hey, anyone, if you have a superior product, you can make it happen. But in practice, if you kind of extrapolate capitalism to its final stages, late stage capitalism, you see that it actually perverts the original intent behind some of these capitalistic ideals.
You know, you could probably say that a lot of the issues in there come from treating corporations as individuals, right? Because you give these individual rights to people so they can protect their work and protect their IP. And the moment it's transferred to a corporation, you can do things with it that you wouldn't be able to do necessarily as an individual. And I see the benefit of having limited liability, and also pooling assets and pooling IP and pooling talent. That, you know, those are all great things. But when a corporation can get away with dodgy practices and the individuals behind those tactics are not reprimanded, then we start to see that late stage capitalism kick in, where everything becomes predatory, everything becomes extractive, everything is reduced to ones and zeros, and you lose the personal touch.
Yep.
The same with rent seeking. I mean, I pay rent in my place, and the lady who owns my house does minimal repairs. She's nice enough, and I definitely wouldn't want to slate her at all. And I understand her position. She owns 4 houses. I at one point needed a new something on my back door or whatever, a new fence, and she's like, "Oh, well, I just spent £30,000 on a new house at my other place." Well, sorry, but that doesn't affect me. I pay you rent in my house, and you should therefore, look after me as an individual, not as part of your wider portfolio. So yeah, those are the 2 examples that come to mind as I listen to your take on that.
Yeah, I think like especially like that thing you said about corporations being considered as individuals, I think that's it's pretty bad because first of all, they are immortal, right? First of all, they can be immortal, which means that like you don't have that natural lifespan, which can potentially stop someone's accrual of capital, right? And the next thing is that you can create a corporation to take the fall for you. So it's essentially like, hey, I'm doing all this terrible stuff, and imagine if NF Thinker, you're a corporation, I can just have NF Thinker like take the bullet for me. Oh, NF Thinker's dead. But at the same time, like I'm the one who decided to do those things, not this
Right.
faceless corporation, right? And in some industries, they don't even allow people to have corporations. So, for instance, in Canada, if you're a doctor, you can have a limited liability corporation, but you can't have a full corporation. And what that means is that you still have some liability when it comes to things like malpractice and stuff. And the reason why that's important is because you actually want doctors to be able to be held accountable when they make bad decisions, right? And so it's in some industries they see that that is important, and I think that maybe it's important in more industries than people think. So, despite the fact that I think our ownership is being stripped away, I do think that there are some places right now where people value ownership. Employee stock option plans, I think this is a key part of the what I call the Silicon Valley zeitgeist and the stock market, right? Like this idea that you can own a piece of the financial upside of a company. Typically, these people don't get any decision-making abilities. They're a different class of shares and stuff like that, but they do get some they do get some financial upside. And I think that that is what keeps people around. The idea that the hard work that they're putting in could get them disproportionate results. I think that that is really important and a key driver in Silicon Valley. Another thing is neighborhoods. So some people say that when you have more owners, you have more engagement. And so there's like let's say it could be a correlation and not a causation here, but there's some data which kind of shows that like, oh, okay, in places where people buy versus where people rent, there's more parks there, or there are better kept parks, there are better kept schools. The schools have higher engagement. I would also suggest that this might be because well, where people rent, they're typically lower income and maybe more time pressed than where people buy. But in general, I feel like that idea that if you have more owners or if you own a house in the neighborhood, you have more stake in its future. I think it's definitely at least something that people perceive. Another thing is owning a small business versus working for a man, for the man. I think that it is valuable to a lot of people to own their own business, to be their own boss. And I think that we see a lot of those. We saw a lot of those people at Bankless now. This idea that hey, I own a piece of this. I don't have to listen to a boss. I wanna make my own destiny. That's really important. And even things like in co-ops. I mean, I think like there's some stats I had in our most recent pitch deck for BCard where we talk about the rise of co-ops and how co-ops have like risen in total value locked in members by like 25% over the last couple of years. So there's really this idea that hey, we do want to own more things. And then finally, like I think things like art, music, photos, paintings, films, ownership rights are pretty well understood. They're well understood to the point where people actually game the system quite often. You've probably heard of people who own rights to things and then just kind of like sit on those rights and pay others to see if others are using the rights and then just sue very very quickly. The same thing happens in software development, but I think that the key to notice is that people see the value in the ownership of these things and they seek them out, and there's an economy behind it. Yeah. Do you see any other places in the world where ownership is seen as a positive thing, or um, there's some sort of engagement around ownership?
I mean, if you would maybe change the term ownership to sovereignty, because they're sort of connected, right? You own your own destiny when you're a self-sovereign person. I think that unlocks a lot of value for people, seeing themselves as a sovereign individual or being a part of a sovereign group. That is sort of ownership to yourself and ownership to that group. So that's obviously a recurring theme everywhere throughout the cypherpunk crypto scene, is the idea of self sovereignty, and also with that comes this sense of not just ownership but pride in ownership. It brings you sort of closer to your community. I think that's how we saw the rapid rise of DAOs, because everybody was, there's a lot of mimetic momentum behind DAOs. You see one person getting in, you want to get in too, your buddy got rich, whatever it may be. Or it maybe just brings you closer to the sun, don't be Icarus. But it also allows you to defend your ownership of that community, or what you perceive as your own ownership of that community, right? The people of Bankless DAO wanted to make sure that it succeeded because they were a part of it and they owned it, and everybody was, full steam ahead. The thing that took the wind out of the sails for Bankless DAO was learning that actually, we didn't really have any ownership over the name itself, and the name for us was our identity. So I think ultimately that's why that particular DAO failed. But you have to have the ownership, or the perceived ownership of the identity, in order to take pride in that ownership. And I it also, I want to quickly touch on some of the WEF movements and these globalist movements that are happening around the world. WEF came out specifically and said, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And that doesn't mean you will have nothing. I believe that just means they want to move to a society where everybody just rents everything, micropayments. And as a matter of fact, crypto is fantastic for that. And digital ID is fantastic for that, because you're attached to these micropayments. But what it also does is it totally strips you of your personal pride, because there is no self-sovereignty. You just become a number in a spreadsheet, and we then lose compassion for other humans, compassion for ourselves. So those are the things that I think of when you bring up ownership like that.
Yeah, and I think like that idea of sovereignty is also being tested right now, as we're seeing like the hegemony in the United States being challenged a little bit. So the most recent thing was China had decided, because of a move that the U.S. made, it keeps being tit for tat, that they were going to put some export restrictions on rare earths. That if you use Chinese rare earths in your product, you need to get a sign off from Beijing before you send that product to another party. So if you were like, let's say, a chip manufacturer, even if you were based in the United States and you bought some Chinese rare earths to make those chips, and then you sold those chips to someone else to put into a computer, well, you'd actually need Beijing sign off to do that, which is like a pretty big sovereignty move, right? Like this idea that they could have that rule, or something like that they could restrict access to rare earths. And the United States didn't take very kindly to that, right? They created some tariffs. So I think that the ideas that we've had around our sovereignty in the kind of zero interest rate era are being challenged right now, on all fronts, right? Like I would say, like in Canada, where we noticed that a lot of our shipments were going through the United States to go to the EU, and so recently they penned some deals to have direct port access from a lot of our East Coast ports directly into some of the big ports into the EU. And so, like, we didn't have sovereign shipping lanes, and you may not think that's a big deal, but when things start to get tariffed, all of a sudden it becomes a big deal, right? So, that idea of sovereignty, I think, is really important because it's not just about economics, although you start to notice it during economics. It's about resilience in a lot of ways. So I think one of the things that we don't often talk about in this space, but I think that people already take this into account, but we don't talk about it. I mean, there was a big airdrop yesterday, but anyways, let me get into the counterpoint first. There's a cost to ownership. So here's a couple choice quotes. The things you own end up owning you. That's from Chuck Palahniuk. It's from Fight Club. The more things we own, the more we're owned by them. That's from Rousseau. A man is rich in proportion to the number of things which he can afford to let alone. Thoreau. This is from Walden when he was just like living in a cabin in the woods for 2 years. Wealth consists not of having great possessions, but in having few wants. Epictetus. He's a Stoic philosopher. So my kind of summing up of all those is that you could say that you have to be careful of what you own because what you own will come to define you. So we say you are what you eat, but in some ways you are what you own. So I think that that is really important. I mean, I'll bring it in context of these things like airdrops and like you don't have unlimited energy and attention to spend on every single community, right? Like really, if you're engaged with one community, Banklistau or another community, it's very difficult to be engaged in a bunch of other communities as well. And I think it's pretty obvious to see when you try. I mean, even just trying to like as we had this nouns proposal out, trying to like get into the nouns community and stuff like that. It's a lot of work, right? Especially if you're new to try to understand all of the things that are going on, to understand the kind of like cultural norms, to understand where to even find people because Nouns is very decentralized. They have like 5 different Discords, Twitter Spaces, email lists, websites. So it can be pretty overwhelming and it takes a lot of attention and energy. And if you're part of that community, you can't. All this means is you can't be part of unlimited communities. It means that you can't have unlimited ownership on things. If you have like your landlord friend or your landlord, maybe they're not your friend, and a thinker, and you have like 6 houses that you have to take care of, well, that means that each individual house is getting less care. Yeah. So I think that that is important to note because it also means that when you're creating a community, it's not just that you have to be putting something interesting out there or valuable out there. It has to be more interesting and more valuable than other things that people could be doing. Sorry, and I think I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I just want to add on there. You said as your ownership scales up, your attention to detail scales down, I suppose, in a way. And that doesn't have to necessarily be like that. There are healthy ways of scaling, and that's when you delegate jobs to your wider community. So she has a husband, and he does help do some things. I wouldn't say he's particularly useful, judging by the jobs he's done around this place. But if she had a very useful husband, together they could look after 12 homes, maybe. And as you grow that community, and this is, I often think back to my dad. He was always telling me, "Oh, there's nothing here in this hometown. You got to get out of Oroville and you got to go see the world and do whatever." And that's fine. I appreciate his push to get me out the door, but at the same time, if you keep your family around, you can nurture that community, and you pass down your your customs, your knowledge, your tasks, your routines, all these things that mean a lot that you build over the years. And as family members leave the house, I think that another sort of myth of modern humans is like everyone has to own their own house and you go off and do your own thing. Well, what's wrong with nurturing a community within your own home? I feel like the Jewish communities with they have I think it's called the Kabbalah. I can't remember the exact term for it, but it's like a compound where they've got a school, they have people who are nurses or medically trained, have people who do the cooking. They have people who bring home the bacon per se. They
No,
make the money, right?
Kibbutz. Like
Kibbutz.
a
That's
yeah.
but
yes, and uh, it just goes to say that there are ways of scaling community and scaling your ownership without necessarily taking full ownership, but you delegate jobs out and roles out to each other. And that's where, decentralized communities and decentralized ownership really start to flourish.
yeah, I think that's a point you can't really understate. This idea, I mean, I think like one of the things that we've lost in as we've like really pursued this kind of North American like very secular world, and we've lost a little bit of that family, of that community around religion and stuff too. Not that that was all good, right? Like there are reasons why it's useful to have things like state-run orphanages and state-run like old folks homes and that kind of thing. But I think that there is a value to family that sometimes we lost, especially when you're thinking about exactly what you said. We used to have multi-generational homes, and now we have single family homes, and what that means is now you have to pay for childcare. You don't have someone to look after your kids if you want to have a night out. It used to take a village to raise a kid, and it's not like that as much anymore. And it may be the reason why we have higher instances of anxiety and difficulty with kids. I mean, it's probably not the only reason, but I definitely think that it could be a reason.
Absolutely. Yep. Totally agree with that.
So if we're taking that idea that like, and I agree with you that like, you can scale ownership, but I always think that there's like some sort of cost to ownership. It's that kind of responsibility that Tom was talking about earlier. I think that when you have ownership without responsibility, it creates some, let's say, negative incentives or perverse incentives where, hey, I am going to keep buying things because I don't need to give them any attention. This idea of rent seeking, that's where it takes you, right? When you don't give attention to the things you own. I think that Mary Kondo wrote that book, like The Life-Changing Art of Tidying Up. And she was really talking about like how everything you should own should spark joy. And I think that there's a lot of interesting ideas or a lot of interesting implications to that philosophy. Because it's true that like, sometimes you're part of a family and you're not having a good time all the time with your family, right? Sometimes there are hard times, but I think that in general, you want all of the things that you belong to, or that you have some ownership in, to be an overall net positive in your life. Because if they're not, then I think that there's a problem. Even if in the short term you may have to go through some hard times, like overall, if you look back at it, it should be a positive experience. That's what we need for a community, but that's also what we need as individuals for each of the things that we own in our lives. I'll give you one example. I have never owned a home. I've had a chance to own a home a couple times in my life, and I never took it because I didn't want to handle all of the upkeep related to a home. And so I always have a rental, and that's always worked for me. But it means that I can't do things like I can't change the way something looks. I can't necessarily like change walls or anything like that. I can't. It's a big hassle to paint because I have to paint back, and so often I have never done some of those things. Um, but I did do it in one home, and that was the home that felt the most homey for me. And I think that like that kind of ownership that I had over that home, it created an engagement that I never really had in any of the homes that I rented. I actually lost where I was going with this, but anyways, I see we're close to time here. Any other thoughts on ownership that we want to bring forth? It's worth mentioning as well that anyone who's ever contributed to this community does have some ownership in this community. We are trying to make it a little bit more. We're testing kind of the limits of that as we are working with this test token. But ultimately, the intent is for everyone to have like real tokens, and all of these things that we are doing related to the accounting, the historical accounting, and this other kind of stuff. I think that this is also, let's say, um, the idea is that this community here is owned by everyone here, and we have been since the very beginning noting down the contribution that everyone has made, so that we can have like a fair ownership structure. But the idea being that like hopefully the work that we're putting in now eventually leads to a kind of like self-sustaining community where we can really feel proud of what we've built together, and really have all of the upside and decision making that's associated with that. So I just want to thank you guys all for being here. It's not possible to do anything like this alone, and so I really appreciate being able to own something with all of you. And I think that blockchain makes that a lot more possible. So thanks, everyone.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks everybody for chatting.
I guess.
Cheers.